everyone. This is Tamara from shelfaddiction.com, and welcome to episode 108. Tonight, I'm interviewing author Jenny Trout. Jenny is not only an author, she's a blogger and a funny person. She made the USA Today bestseller list with her debut novel, Blood Ties Book 1, The Turning. Her American Vampire book was also one of the top 10 horror novels of 2011 by Booklist Magazine Online. Under the pseudonym Abigail Barnett, Jenny writes award-winning erotic romance, including the international bestseller The Boss series. I'll be chatting with Jenny about her writing, Rust City BookCon, and more. This is one of the many interviews where I'm exclusively chatting with the authors that will be in attendance at Rust City BookCon locally here in Michigan this August 4th through 6th. For those of you that want to know more, I have a link below in the show notes, or you can go to rustcitybookcon.com. Tickets are still available. Hey, Jenny, thank you for joining me tonight. How are you?
I am doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's actually cooled off a little bit in Michigan, and you're in Michigan too, right?
I am in Michigan. I'm over down the crack between your pinky and your ring finger. If you drew a line straight down towards your heel of your hand, I'm down there.
Ah, so you're kind of far away from me since I'm Metro Detroit area, which is kind of the point beneath your thumb and your index finger, yeah. A little bit lower in the cheek of it.
I love how Michigan we are that we're trying to hand map when we can't see each other.
Look, that's the only way to do it. That's how you know if you're from Michigan, if you can point to your hand and say, here, I'm from here. That's awesome. So with all of that, we got so much going on. So let's just jump in. You ready?
Yeah, let's do this.
All right. So, there are always writers that read as much as us readers read. And I assume that you're one of those people. So do you want to share with us what's on your reading list right now?
Oh, gosh. I'm actually not one of those authors that reads a whole bunch. I'm dyslexic, so I have I'm a very slow reader. But when I read a lot of different genres. I'll read erotic romance. I'll read young adult. I'll read. For a while, I was on an Amish romance binge.
I've never heard of that genre.
Oh, it's a very specialized genre, and but I don't know, it got me for a while, but recently I think the best book that I read was The Hate U Give by Angie Thomas.
Ooh, that's on my book club TBR list.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, it's just even if you are looking at it, a lot of people are saying oh yeah, it's very timely and it's a very good social commentary, and it really is, but I think one of the, even more, not more, but also impressive parts of it is how real the teenagers seem in the book. And it's just, they have real lives. It's like hearing real teenagers talk. And I was just so impressed by that.
Wow. Well, yeah, I hear a lot of good things about it. So I'm personally looking forward to reading it. So can I ask what you rated that? 1 out of 5?
I would give it not a 1 out of 5. I would give it a 5 out of 5.
Yay! Okay, now I'm
1 out of 5. It's a great book. I was thinking number 1.
Oh no! Like Goodreads rating.
No, Goodreads rating would be 5 out of 5 stars.
Okay,
for that.
Awesome. So now I'm excited. Okay, awesome. So tell me a little bit about maybe the books or authors that you would think have influenced your personal writing style.
Oh, wow. Okay, so when I was in high school, I really wanted to be Anne Rice. That was my thing. I wanted to write just like her. My first books that I ever wrote were vampire novels. And I just absolutely, she was my number one top influence. But then as I started my writing journey, I became more influenced by the writers around me who were helping me and sort of forming my my style with their help. And Bronwyn Green is an erotic romance author who will also be at Rust City. She was instrumental in helping me sort of learn the mechanics that shaped the way my voice comes across. Stephen King is another one too that I very much, when I was an early writer starting out, if he had a tip about a book, you should write like this, I would immediately, that's how I would do it.
Right. Wow. Very cool. Those are all great authors. So that's really cool. So being that you mentioned that you kind of, your earlier writings to start in urban fantasy and paranormal, like with The Turning and American Vampire, what inspired you to kind of switch gears and write, romance with heavy erotica and BDSM aspects?
Well, it started out that in my writing group, there was a writing group that I was a part of where we would critique each other's work and stuff like that. And Bronwyn Green was in that. And actually, I think she was the first one to start among us to start writing erotic romance with like a BDSM theme to it. Mm-hmm. Like there were a couple other erotic authors in the group, but I think she was the first one who I read her like a BDSM scene from. And that was a long time ago, and I eventually said, maybe I would like, because everybody was having so much fun with it, and the genre was exploding, and there was like this sort of like collective of people who this was their thing. It was like a little, like kind of like a little clique, but more like a community, I guess, of authors that were all writing this. I thought, man, they're having so much fun. I'm going to try this and see if I can't, and then I ended up really liking it. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad I did. I've met a lot of great people who, write in that genre, and we can be kind of tight knit. I mean, like it's recently exploded in a big way, but prior to this recent sort of surge in it did seem sort of small and like a little family.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that this genre, maybe exclusively to how you write, do you think it's kind of along that border where you can entice, romance readers to read it and still, keep people who like the erotic, fiction entertained as well?
In terms of blending the audience together?
Yeah.
I have never, that's interesting because I think that I think people will go one way, but not necessarily the other way. Like I think people that read erotica can pick up an erotic romance and go, oh, okay, there's romance in it too. A little bit easier than a romance reader picks up an erotic romance without enjoying the erotica element of it.
Okay.
Because I've noticed, I have never had anybody say, there's just too much romance in this. I have had a lot of people say there's way too much sex in it, and that's usually people saying, I read, like I like contemporary romance, I like paranormal romance, I like whatever, but there was too much sex in this. So I mean, there's obviously a lot of readers. It wouldn't be that combo genre if that readership wasn't there. But I think that, people who traditionally read like traditional romances, some of them have a harder time crossing over than people from like who just read erotica.
Okay. So this series that we're talking about today is the Boss series. So obviously on a scale of 1 to 10 with the heat level, you're obviously putting this at a 10, right?
Yeah. And I mean, like now that I've written along in the series a little bit, like I look at the first book and I go, wow, that's really tame compared to like some of the stuff they get up to but series wise overall, yeah, I'd say it's pretty high up there on the naughty scale.
Okay. Well, The Boss you wrote under your pseudonym, Abigail Barnett. So for those out there that don't know that, you might want to look it up that way using that name. Can you tell us a little bit about the series overall? I mean, we know it's erotic romance, but can you give us a little sneak peek?
Yeah, it's about a heroine, Sophie, who she works as it's sort of like in a kind of a Devil Wears Prada kind of situation we find her in at the very beginning of the first book, wherein she works for this very demanding boss at a fashion magazine. But the story opens on the day that boss is fired and a new boss comes in. And the guy that has bought this magazine turns out to be a one-night stand that Sophie had right out of high school. She was going to jump on a plane and go to Tokyo, and there was a delay, and she ended up, having this incredible night with this guy that she lied to and said, I'm 25 or whatever. And then, now years later, she meets him and she has to fess up to all this, like I lied to you back then, but why did you leave me in the hotel room and all this stuff? And they try to form this kind of like friends with benefits relationship, which we know in romance never stay as just friends. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what the first book covers.
Oh, okay. So it's not insta-lust, or is it more kind of like a slow kind of thing, or does it happen real fast?
I would say, I don't know, for an erotic romance, I would say it's kind of a slow burn in terms of when the first sex scene happens. But there's definitely, like, when she sees him again, there's a lot of conflicted feelings of, like, oh my gosh, this is the guy I've been fantasizing about for 6 years, and nobody's ever lived up to him, and now he's back, and he's wrecking up this part of my life that that I've worked really hard for. But I still kind of want to, get with him. So that's sort of, there's that sort of like slow burn period, but I don't think it would be considered, if I was reading like a contemporary romance and it went to chapter 6 without a sex scene, I wouldn't think like, wow, this is really a slow burn, but I think in an erotic romance it kind of is.
Yeah. Well, I don't necessarily mind that, to be honest. I mean, because while I have read erotic romance, it's not my main genre, but I do read it. And I kind of like it that way because then I buy into them, right? I'm like, okay, I believe that they have this kind of relationship, or that they could have this kind of relationship because they just didn't meet yesterday. And now she's like, do all kind of crazy things to me. So I just buy it a little better. So I can appreciate that.
Yeah, I think I find it, I'm a little bit more forgiving of the insta-lust thing when it's a paranormal romance. I don't know if you read paranormal romance, but...
Oh, it's my favorite.
Yeah, so you know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's a little bit more believable where it's like, oh, hey, we're, like, fated to be together, like, type thing. Right. And you're like, okay, yeah, I can go along with that. But, yeah, when it's stuff like, oh, gosh, I just ran into you and you're so hot and let's go do it. I read a book recently where, like, the people, it was, like, her downstairs neighbor, and she thought for, like, I don't know, like an hour or something about, oh, this would be terrible that, if we hooked up, and then went and hooked up with him. And I was like, oh, wow, this happened. Like, there was no build up. There was no reason. You didn't really know the characters. There was no reason to sort of be invested in whether or not they hooked up. And then it just happened. And it was like, well, now what?
Oh, yeah.
I got 400
that's
pages
not
of
good.
this.
Yeah, she needed to be like a vampire or, something so that we could understand how they just couldn't resist each other, or wolf packs. Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about Sophie. Obviously, you might be able to tell because I love urban fantasy and paranormal romance. I love a strong, outspoken heroine, right? I love one that can, speak up for herself and be like a strong woman. Now, I know with this type of genre, it kind of walks that border. But is Sophie one of those women that can be both? Can she be in a BDSM situation and also come across as a strong heroine?
I think that Sophie, when we start out in The Boss, she's still very young. She's 24 years old. This is her first job right out of college. She has never been able to stand up to her boss. She's got all this stuff going on. And at the same time, she has a very strong personality in her personal dealings with people. Like, she's not the kind of person that gives someone a lot of chances to make her a doormat. She calls people out. She gives herself permission to not like people, which is one of those things that when I was writing it, I was like, I wish that I could kind of be like this. But, so it's not as though she's this sort of perpetual walking, like, gosh, I don't know what's going on. I need this dom to come along and open my eyes to the world. She's like, oh, hey, I really like this part. I really like being bossed around in this sexual context. I really like being told what to do. And it does kind of tie into like her thing about like, is there something wrong with me? Because I'm like that at work too. And like trying to separate, who she is outside of the bedroom, and who she is inside the bedroom. But overall, she has her own life and very definite ideas of how her life is going to go that, the hero Neil he's not going to be able to sort of shake her from that. It's not going to be a situation where he says, oh, I want you to go on this kind of birth control. And she goes, oh, yes, whatever, you're the billionaire. And, that kind of thing.
I freaking hate that. I really hate that. I do. So I'm glad Sophie is not like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, he's a billionaire. Neil is a billionaire. He is, there's a huge age difference between them. He's 24 years older than her.
Whoa.
Yeah. And he is, still, like he's her boss for, a big chunk of the story. And yet I don't feel between them as a couple. If they were real people, I wouldn't go, oh, wow, there's like a weird mismatch. Like he must run the show. Because I, try as hard as I can to make them equals, even if they're coming from completely different places, even if there are times they don't understand each other and one of them thinks, well, I know the best. I try to be very sure to keep them equals, even with the Dom-sub relationship in their lives.
Okay. Well, tell me about Neil a little bit. Is he the typical Dom type character? He is wealthy, as most of them are, but is he also like that Christian Grey, and I'm using like the little air quotes, type of breed or something else, where he's not, this is what you're going to eat, this is what you're going to do, is Neil different from that?
Yeah. I have no interest in heroes like that. And when I write, I try to write books that I'm going to want to read. And so when I was trying to imagine Neil as like this, like, who is the kind of guy that if I was in this relationship, I would want to be in, he is very careful about establishing boundaries with Sophie when she's saying like, at one point, I don't want to bring a toothbrush to your house. I don't want it to be like that. I don't want it to seem like I'm kind of here. I don't want to, spend the night all the time at your house and things like that. I want to maintain a distance between our lives. He's, okay, yeah, I respect that. There's even a scene where he wants to come to her house to talk to her, to her apartment to talk to her. And she makes a joke about, well, couldn't you just look up my address on like the company database or something? And he's like, I would never do that. Like that would be an invasion of your privacy. So I tried to make him, very much for me, the idealized version of the guy that I would want to be in a relationship with.
Yeah, he definitely sounds likable just from that. Like, oh, he's not entitled and he doesn't think he has the right to do whatever he wants. So I'm sure that's appealing to a lot of readers. So.
Yeah, and I think that, there are times he comes across in the books as a little bit paternalistic towards her, like sort of like, I'm older than you and wiser therefore, but she calls him out on it, and I try as much as I can to sort of make it realistic and like sometimes be like, okay, well, Sophie, maybe in this he has a little bit of a point, like, and I feel like I'm sitting on the outside of it, like as a moderator, like, Sophie, maybe he has a point this time, but the way
right.
He's putting it is this, so you need to let him know.
Yeah.
I feel like a couples therapist sometimes writing them.
Oh, that's too funny. So what do you think that you most enjoy about the characters that you've developed for this series?
I like the fact that they all have flaws. I don't like the overly idealized characters, so I like to give them flaws that make them seem sort of realistic. And I'm really proud of myself because I am one of those people that tends towards, oh, my characters are wonderful and they would never be terrible and they would never blah, blah, blah. And then, and I get kind of attached. And so I'm really proud of myself this time that I can go, you know what? If Sophie were a real person, she would get on my nerves real fast. I probably wouldn't want to be around her very much, and to be able to admit that about my characters, I feel really good about. So basically, yeah, like the fact that they have flaws like out the wazoo.
That's good. That makes the reader relate. I can relate to flaws. I think we all can. So do you think that anyone can pick up this book and start from 1, or do you think that they can start from 2 or 3? Does it follow Sophie and Neil exclusively, or are there different leading characters?
It follows Sophie and Neil exclusively, so definitely starting at number 1. There's also a 0.5 sort of a prologue called The Stranger, which is about their one night stand together. But I wrote that after the 5th book in the series, so it's also probably kind of fun to just wait until that point, or like wait until you've read a few and then go, I really want to know about what happened that night. But yeah, I would say start from 1. It's also free, so that's a good place to start.
Yes, on Kindle free, right? On Amazon.
Yep, it's free everywhere, actually. So. Oh,
okay, great. So do you think you had any challenges when you were writing the first book in this series? Did you do some research? Did you have some writer's block? Did you have to get past some mental blocks to write this book?
Yeah, at the time, I was writing a feature on my blog where I was going through 50 Shades of Grey chapter by chapter. And at this time, I was experiencing a very big dip in my career. And I had sort of like hung it up at that point. I was like, you know what? I'm never getting another book published. It doesn't matter what I say anymore. The gloves can come off. I'm going to go on my blog and I'm going to talk about all the things that are wrong with 50 Shades of Grey. And I did it for like 4 years. But
wow, 50 Shades of Grey rampage, huh?
I was furious, but I was going through chapter by chapter, and I would get people who would say, well, if you think you're so great, do you think, if you think you can do better, why don't you? And then finally I was like, all right, I'm going to take that challenge up. And when The Boss first came out, I was releasing it as a bi-monthly and then eventually a weekly serial on its own blog. And my fear was that I was going to write something and think, okay, well, this is the opposite of what happened in 50 Shades of Grey, and have someone go, this is just as bad, or this is exactly the same thing, or this is... So I had a lot of fear that I was going to not be able to practice what I preached, basically. Mm-hmm. So that was the biggest challenge. Wow.
Yeah, I can see that, being that you spent a lot of time, dissecting that book. You didn't want to come across as the polar opposite just for the sake of it, right?
Well, I wanted it to come across as being not the same and being an alternative, but I didn't want to accidentally make the same mistakes.
Right.
That I found in the books, or the things that I objected to in the books. And so that really actually can really block you sometimes when you're sitting there trying to plot things.
Mm-hmm. Wow, I believe that. So is there anything else that you would like to share with the readers about this series before we go on to the next topic?
Basically, I just, I wrote it because it was something that I wanted to read. I wanted to see more representation in there for basically all sorts of things I wasn't seeing in books, like positive representations of BDSM that wasn't like, because this thing happened to me that was terrible, now I like this horrible other thing, I just sort of wanted to make something different. And so I think that if that's the kind of thing that a reader is into, if there's somebody out there who's going, I like this genre, but I would like something different within it, I mean, hey, it's free, might as well give it a try, right?
Yeah, that's a perfect excuse to give it a try. It's free. So let's talk a little bit about your current and future projects. What are you working on right now?
Right now, I am working on the 6th Boss book. And that one's called The Sister. I took a year off from writing those particular books just to have a little bit of a break, because the last installment that came out was a little bit heavy for me to write. And so then I came back, a year later, and I'm like, okay, now I'm back into it again. And I'm also working on a vampire novel. So I haven't done that in a while, but another paranormal romance.
Okay, awesome. So, there are always writers in the audience, or people that are aspiring writers that are always looking for information and feedback and advice from published authors. Is there any advice that you could give to aspiring writers?
Yeah. Finish a manuscript. It's really hard, but once you do it once, you can do it over and over and over again. And somebody told me that once, and I think that is the number one best piece of advice I've ever gotten in my entire career to this point. Just, and also just in navigating, you're like, oh, Jen, I've already finished a manuscript, so that advice is useless to me. Then the second piece of advice would be to, when you're in this business and you're working with people, if they let you know who they are, believe them. And that's not trying to be down on the business or anything like that, but we definitely tell writers who are sort of coming into, especially like romance and YA and those things, like, oh, this is just like a big supportive, collaborative family, and we'll support you no matter what, and all this stuff. And sometimes people take advantage of that. So there's nothing wrong with guarding your own career.
Right, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. That would just be dreadful. Have someone steal your work or something crazy because you're too trusting. That would be the worst. That's good advice. You guys listen to Jenny. She knows what she's talking about. Is that from experience or just from something you've seen?
Just from, I think all authors have had experiences where, someone will seem very supportive and, very trustworthy. And then you'll sort of go down the line and you'll find out it's just like any sort of thing, like where you'll meet somebody and they seem really, really nice. And then you'll like, oh, they said such and such behind your back, or, you'll meet someone who seems supportive, but then if you get a little success, they're rooting for you to fail. And I see this happen over and over and over with all sorts of, sort of clashes and stuff that I've seen. 'Cause I've been writing I've been published for over 10 years now. So that's, in the writing world is a lot of time to sort of observe the scenery, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Rust City because that's what brought us together today. So what books will you be bringing to the signing? You have several titles, so are you bringing them all? Are you bringing a few?
I will probably bring a few. I know for sure when I go places, I always bring The Boss because it's the book I'm the most proud of. And also, it's the first in a series. I find that, if I go places and I have just the second or third books, that's not very helpful to people. And I might bring, First Time or which is a spinoff from the Neil and Sophie books. And just whatever I've got going on. I'm from day to day, I'm not real planned out. So it'll be a mystery, I guess, for what I know I'll show up with The Boss, but who knows what else will be with me.
Okay. So is this your first time to Rust City?
It is. I wanted to go last year, but I'd already made a commitment for that weekend, and I'm so psyched to come to a conference in Michigan. It's like we never get that kind of thing.
I know. It's great, too. It's great to talk to authors and readers alike. And I think that's one of my favorite things about that is, it's like kind of a small group. So it's not like 1,000 people where you get lost. It's, smaller and intimate. So what are you most looking forward to during Rust City?
Well, I am really looking forward to meeting people that, I've maybe only talked to online or just people that I've never met before that are out here and close in terms of, as close as writers are. Because, we don't all go to the same building one day and work together. It'll be nice to meet other people from the general area. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I think you'll have a great time with that. Do you already know authors that are going to be there? Obviously, you know people online, but do you have any friends that are authors that are going to be there? So you kind of are with somebody or,
Yeah, my friend Bronwyn Green is going to be there, and my friend Jessica Jarman, and I am not sure. I should have looked at the list of authors because I feel like there's a few people in there that I've met before, and have been at conferences before, not like BFFs or conference buddies, but people you run into and you talk to, and you're excited to see them when you go to a conference. You're like, hey, that person's there. So I've got a couple of those on that list too.
Oh, cool. So are you doing any of the panel topics? Are you going to sign up for that?
I haven't. That's a good question. I did mention panel topics, but I'm so disorganized. I don't know if an email has gone out with the panel topics yet. But yeah, I said I would do panels. So just wherever she sticks me, I guess awesome. I'll show up and I'll talk to people.
Great. So outside of Rust City, can readers find you at any other events this summer?
This year I have taken a year off from traveling because I was going everywhere for the past 2 years. Mm-hmm. So Rust City is the only convention that I'm doing this year.
Okay. Well, fans of Jenny better come out and see her since that's the only time to see her this year.
Yeah, it's your once in a year time opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, that's it. Let's do our lightning round. Did I tell you about the lightning round?
You didn't. I'm so excited.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So here are the rules. It's 60 seconds, 60 questions. Some are book related, some are not. And it's only for, like I said, a minute. And it's fun. It's just lighthearted, fun questions. And I think this allows the audience to get to know you a little more. And I just think it's fun. So I have to set a timer because I'll be asking more than questions than a minute if I don't set the timer.
Now, are these like trivia questions, or are they just like, what's your favorite food type thing?
Yeah, they're like A or B. So you can do A or B, but the only trick is you can't say neither or both. So you actually have to make a choice.
Oh, no. Okay.
Okay. You down?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to hit the start button. Physical books or ebooks?
Ebooks.
Hero or villain?
Hero.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Name a book that you've read in one sitting.
Hearts of Atlantis.
Beer or wine?
Wine.
Milk chocolate or dark chocolate?
Dark chocolate.
Vampires or werewolves?
Vampires.
Where is your favorite place to read?
In bed.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Cake or pie?
Pie.
What's your favorite alcoholic mixed drink?
A Moscow Mule.
Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Android or Apple?
Android.
Yay! Name your favorite food.
Mac and cheese.
And name two of your favorite authors.
That was really hard. You can't just do that one out there. Okay. I'm gonna say Bronwyn Green and Jess Jarman, because if they listen to this, then they'll know.
Oh, nice. And time's up.
All right.
You did really well. See? Fun.
I don't think it's Hearts of Atlantis. I think it's Jewel of Atlantis by Gina Showalter.
Okay.
It's well, really thanks good for that.
Book. Okay. Well, thanks for doing that. I always have a good time doing that. So I hope you enjoyed it as well.
Oh, yeah.
Are there any last tidbits you'd like to share with the audience before we sign off for the evening?
Just if you're coming out to Rust City and you meet me, be prepared to answer a lot of questions about the town you come from. I don't know why, but when I meet people, I just start asking them all sorts of questions about where they're from. It's how I found out that Arizona has a monsoon season, I guess. Mm-hmm. So I want to know about the weather where you live.
Oh, cool. Okay. Well, what if everyone's in Michigan and you already know the weather in Michigan?
Oh, man. Well, no, but then we can complain about it together. I'll be like, are you from Michigan? And then they'll be like, yeah. And then we'll both say sorry because we're from Michigan and you always say sorry for some reason. And then we'll complain about the weather because it's the state sport.
Yeah, that's what we do all day, every day. Well, this has been good fun. And thank you so much for joining me this evening. And I definitely look forward to meeting you at Rust City.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Thanks. Take care.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in and downloading today's episode. If you are enjoying the Book Chat episodes and would like to show your support, there are a few things you can do. First, you can head on over to iTunes and give a positive 5-star review. You can follow me on Twitter at Shelf Addiction. You can follow the Shelf Addiction podcast on Spreaker, the only place where you can listen live and get broadcast notifications so that you never miss a live episode. Most importantly, you can share the podcast with friends and family that love books and audiobooks. Thank you for listening, and until next time, happy reading.